Hello and welcome to the Rotary E-Club of District 7710's program for Tuesday, August 22nd. We're very happy you've joined us. If you're visiting us for the first time, you may find out more about our E-Club by going to our website, leadwith.us. That's leadwith.us. You can like us on Facebook, E-Club District 7710, as well as Twitter and Instagram. We meet online most Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And tonight we're very pleased to welcome Matthew Kane, who will be speaking with us about Launch Raleigh. But first, let me introduce you to Matthew. Matthew and his wife Sonia live in Raleigh and have been actively involved as a Rotary family. Two of their children were selected to be Rotary Youth Exchange students and spent a year living in Santiago, Chile. Their family has hosted 3 international youth exchange students. Ryan, their oldest son, is also the president of the Raleigh Midtown Rotary Club. Matthew grew up in Bethesda, Maryland, and has 8 brothers and sisters. He graduated with a business degree from Virginia Tech, and then he and Sonia spent 6 years in Houston before intentionally looking on a map to select Raleigh as their new home. Matthew is the founder of Cutting Edge Engraving and operated this business successfully for 28 years, selling plaques, awards, and industrial engravings before selling his business in June to 5-Star Awards, another Rotarian-owned business. His new title is Happily Retired Rotary Volunteer. Congratulations, that's awesome. Hoping to get more involved in the local community and to make friends through networking, Matthew joined Rotary 20 years ago and was president of the Rotary Club of North Raleigh in 2004 to 2005. Along the way, he developed a real passion for matching grants that gave hope and opportunity to the poor in Central America by focusing on literacy and microfinance loans. As district chair of the grants committee for 3 years, Matthew grew to appreciate the amazing impact Rotarians have made through the Rotary Foundation. Last year, Matthew proposed to his club leaders at their club's 50th anniversary project that should be to develop a culture of entrepreneurship in Southeast Raleigh. With the help of 7 key community partners, Launch Raleigh was born and graduated its first class of 20 entrepreneurs in March of 2017. His club presented him with their Rotarian of the Year award twice, and he was recognized by the Sertoma Club of Raleigh with their Service to Mankind award. Matthew and Sonia celebrate their 35th anniversary this year. They are major donations to the Rotary Foundation and members of the Paul Harris Society. And Matthew was honored to serve as our 2014-15 district governor. And I'm very, very pleased to welcome you tonight. Thank you so much for being with us, Matthew.
Thank you, Eve. It's a joy to be with you all. And there currently these days is no topic I like to talk more about than Launch Raleigh. As a matter of fact, my kids will sometimes say, so what else, Dad, are you doing besides Launch Raleigh? That's kind of the way it works. But the history of Launch Raleigh is really a beautiful situation. A friend of mine operated a nonprofit in Southeast Raleigh. It was called Passage Home. And at the end of a church program, she and I were chatting, and I said, you know, Jean, my Rotary Club has $25,000 that we'd like to use for a big splash project somewhere in the city. Do you have any ideas? And she said, hey, why don't Matthew, you come down to my office in a few days and we'll talk ideas. Well, to make a long story short, what we decided was, she said, Matthew, we've been able to offer a lot of services to the people in Southeast Raleigh, which is the poorest section of Raleigh. We've been able to offer job training. We've been able to offer care for kids after school. We've been able to offer subsidized housing. We've been able to offer some job opportunity placement. But one thing we've never been able to do is encourage entrepreneurship among this group. And many of them have fantastic skills, but they just don't even know where to begin about starting a business. Or if they have a business, usually it's a little hobby on the side and they'd love to be able, probably to be able to expand that business. So I started looking around to find out, okay, I'm a Rotarian. Somebody out there has probably done something similar. I probably don't need to invent something from scratch. So I looked out in the Rotary universe and came across a group called Launch Detroit. And you might want to flip to the next slide. Launch Detroit is about 4 years ago, found a way to put together a program whereby they also wanted to improve entrepreneurship opportunities for the people in Detroit. So they ended up working with a woman by the name of Marilyn Fitzgerald from the Traverse City, Michigan Rotary Club. And together, they put together a program that I just really loved. It blended 4 components that really made a difference to be able to encourage entrepreneurism, because there's some right ways and there's some wrong ways to building entrepreneurism. And what they chose to do was they put together a program that did these 4 components that included business training, microloans up to $2,500, you'd be assigned a mentor, and networking opportunities. And these 4 components, they found through research, would end up being really key components of a launch program that started 4 years ago in Detroit. Next slide. So what we chose to do is my Rotary Club, I proposed to them that we put together a project and we'd call it LaunchRALEIGH. And we'd end up focusing on a specific geographic region of the city, Southeast Raleigh, which is largely African-American, a lot of history of very proud African-American businesses that had been strong in years ago and just not so strong in years more recent. So we ended up identifying community leaders in the Southeast Raleigh area. We partnered with a whole group of civic and government leaders, and we put together this program that was initially modeled after Launch Detroit. And Launch Detroit ended up with a whole group of people who said, we love this idea. The Rotary Foundation did a 3-page article about Launch Detroit, because also Rotary Foundation loves the concept of building entrepreneurship. And Launch Detroit is largely based around Detroit, but what we learned later is that this same model could be used in other cities. Next slide. I think perhaps what I brought to this whole equation was the ability, as many of us Rotarians are, to be a catalyst, to identify leaders and different groups in the community that would step forward and say, you know, I really like the idea of helping this group of people who are trying to help themselves. So Passage Home was my initial partner. We also partnered with Wake Tech, which is our local community college. And they have a small business entrepreneurship program there that is fantastic. Shaw University is a historically Black college located in the same area of Southeast Raleigh. St. Augustine University, same thing. Long-standing, proud tradition of educating Black men and women. The city of Raleigh decided they also wanted to partner with us, as did Carolina Small Business Development Fund and SCORE, which is a mentor organization. Next slide. So the first thing we did, once we realized, you know, we have a great partnership, we have a lot of Rotarians who stepped forward, who said they like to help because they really like the idea of giving opportunities to people in our community to either build a business that never existed or to enhance a business they had already started. So the first thing we did is we tried to find out, did a little bit of recruiting to find out who might be interested in this program. So in our case, we decided to hold information sessions, which again is an idea that we stole from Detroit. They put together information sessions, they invited people in the community to come, And we did this. We hosted 3 information sessions. We had a number of different people come and say, gosh, tell me more about this program. And then what we found, next slide, please. What we found is that there were lots of people very, very interested, and we ended up scheduling interviews. We had something like 65 people expressed interest, and through the website we built, LaunchRALEIGH.org, they were able to learn about the program, register through an application process, and then we gave them an opportunity to sign up for an interview. With a whole series of volunteers, we scheduled the interviews and selected 21 candidates to be part of our very first class. And you can see that list of candidates on the left-hand side. And this, what you see here, is our session where we're essentially, it was our kickoff celebration, and we invited some of the leaders of the local universities. Dr. Stephen Scott, who's the president of Wake Technical Community College, with 70,000 students are enrolled at Wake Tech. We had Linwood Long, who's the president of Carolina Small Business Development Fund. They're our financial partner. Dr. Tashi Dubroy, president of Shaw University. Just a lot of big names of people stepped forward and said, we love this concept. We want to play a role in this important work. We gave each of the students about 60 seconds early on at this event at the beginning, before classes even started, to be able to step forward and confidently say the name of their business and what they hope to learn from Launch Raleigh. And it was a really special, special evening to kick it off. Next slide. So what happened next? We had 8 consecutive Tuesday nights where the students would arrive at 5:30 p.m. We offered a free meal from 5:30 to 6 because, as several of the people suggested, a lot of the students, Matthew, they're going to be coming from their full-time regular day jobs, and if you give them, if they decide they're going to go home and grab some dinner, you may lose them. So why don't you try to feed them when they come? Turned out to be a brilliant idea. So at 5:30 to 6, they not only came and enjoyed a meal, but they developed camaraderie between each other. So you end up with friends learning beside friends. So it was really kind of a special relationship these 21 entrepreneurs developed together. Wake Tech helped us put together the curriculum through the Kauffman Foundation, and we ended up, I thought, with a really, really good education program that for 8 weeks taught a lot of the business basics, including branding, including how to recognize your target audience, how to market your business, how to find customers, how to do cash flow analysis, just a whole lot of things that are really critical for starting a small business, but that sometimes you just might know how to not ever know how to do it because no one ever trained you. Next slide. So 8 weeks later, what did we have? We had a very proud graduating class, and we had a special graduation ceremony. We had a catered event. They came across the stage one by one, received their little diploma, and we gave each of them 5 minutes where they could talk about their business and what they learned in Launch Raleigh and how it benefited them. And of all the things we did over the course of the 8 weeks, I would say to me, that was some of the most touching moments, because many of us Rotarians who put a lot of sweat equity into the program got a chance to listen to these men and women and how this program impacted really their life and how they plan to move forward much more confidently in their business. And they fully recognize that having completed the class, that's step one. Immediately after the class, they get assigned a business mentor who they met on graduation night. The mentor has made a commitment that they would stay with them for 6 months minimum. Next. Yeah, and as the mentor, as I mentioned, so the mentors say, I'm willing to stay with this person for a minimum of 6 months. And the beauty is that we interviewed about 27 different men and women who decided, I think I could be a good mentor. I've got some of the skills necessary. which include, as we tell them, 70% listening and 30% talking. So we're not interested in having a mentor who is going to talk and say, let me tell you how I became so great. That's not the role of a mentor. The mentor's role is to listen and find out perhaps some of the questions that a mentee has, but they just haven't really been able to solve problems. So they kind of walk through some of the problems with the mentee and become friends along the way. So of our 27 mentors we interviewed, we selected 20 and did, I think, a pretty credible job of matching up the mentors with the mentees as best we could. We couldn't get an exact industry match, but often if somebody was, for instance, working in a restaurant type environment, we'd be able to pair them with somebody who was at least working in food service. Next slide. Networking is an important component, and often sometimes the thing people say is one of the most valuable components of Launch Raleigh. Because what happens is at the end of the training session, at the end of the mentorship, what you don't want is to have people feel like you just dropped them off at the side of the curb and from then on they're on their own. So the beauty of the networking component is it allows us to reconnect with them on a monthly basis, and typically it's on a Friday night or a Thursday night, and we're offering networking sessions where they can maybe learn a little bit about branding one time, and the next month might learn about cash flow analysis. They might learn a little bit about marketing techniques, but they also have a chance to kind of rub shoulders with other local entrepreneurs. And here's one of the components we think that's important, is that everybody who has ever applied to Launch Raleigh gets invited to a networking session. So we make no distinction for the networking, whether you're in the class or not in the class, because what we're really trying to do at the end of the day is build a culture of entrepreneurship in Southeast Raleigh. Next. Microloans up to $2,500. We have a loan pool. My Rotary Club of North Raleigh contributed $25,000 to the loan fund because that was a key component early on in being able to establish a launch program to be able to offer these men and women in the program a chance to take out some money and help improve their business by a small loan, recognizing that this is a small loan, but it is also, we make very clear, a loan and not a gift. So as a general rule, for instance, the loan amount is a 5% interest, which over the course of an 18-month loan would only be about $100 interest if you borrowed $2,500. Next slide. Sometimes people have asked us, well, tell me kind of what happened. And here's kind of the very beginning between February 2016, when the idea was seeded, until we ended about 13 months later at the end of March, where we graduated our very first class. And it was really a wild ride. I think when I look back on it, I think it was the partners that we chose, Rotary being a catalyst through the whole program, and having a lot of support and recognition as we went along. The Rotary Foundation hired a videographer to come and record several of the different programs we had. For the induction ceremony in January, they filmed it. They also filmed the graduation ceremony 2 months later in March, because they are ultimately trying to put together an article that would appear in the Rotarian about the launch programs and Rotary's focus on building entrepreneurism around the United States. Next slide. Sometimes people say, so Matthew, what's next? What else have you been doing in Launch Raleigh? And I'm proud to say that Launch Raleigh has gotten really a lot of recognition in the community, both locally and nationally. I was invited to come and speak at the Presidential Peace Conference just before the Atlanta Convention, and we had about 200 people from across the U.S. and different parts of the world who wanted to learn a little bit about how entrepreneurship might be growing by Rotary Club's intervention here in the United States. And Launch Raleigh is a perfect example, alongside Launch Detroit, as well, and a similar group called Launch Atlanta. just this past weekend, I was invited to speak at a zone event, and a zone event is our Rotary zone is zone 33 and 34, all up and down the East Coast and the Caribbean. So I've been invited to speak for 20 minutes to about 250 district leaders about Launch Raleigh. And one of the things, you can go to the next slide. One of the things I'm excited about is that two different things. One is that we have just today actually selected 22 people who are going to be part of our very next class, which begins next month. We had 102 applications. We interviewed 47 candidates with 9 volunteers, including I think 4 of those volunteers were Rotarians. And we selected 22 really highly motivated, qualified, excited entrepreneurs. And actually, they don't even know yet, so I can't release any names, but it's a huge variety of skill set of people who are going to be part of the second Launch Raleigh class. Next slide. Something that has happened pretty recently, and many of you all may have heard of this organization called Kiva. Kiva is an international social media platform whereby people can take out small loans by putting their information on the Kiva website with a photo of them, a little story about who they are and what they would use the loan for. And Kiva puts it out there in the social media network, and they have 100,000 people who on a fairly regular basis go on the Kiva website and look for people that they want to make small loans to, maybe $25, maybe $50 that you use your credit card for. And you find, for instance, oh, here's a borrower in Baltimore, Maryland. Look what she's trying to do. She's trying to create a business that's supporting designers. And you can click on that, learn a little bit more about Chanel, where she lives, and say, you know, I'm not giving any money to Chanel, I'm lending her money. And typically over 90% of these borrowers pay back the loan in full. And one of the things I learned that was pretty fascinating is that if you find yourself, if you're an entrepreneur and you end up being on this Kiva website, over 90% of the people on this website are funded in full within the first 30 days of being on the website. Here's something fascinating too. Kiva heard about Launch Raleigh, and we've been in contact with them for the last 5 weeks, and they'd like our launch program to be part of Kiva, such that we will have access to essentially unlimited funds only by how far 100,000 people around the globe might be generous enough to donate to Launch Raleigh. Next slide. And here's something exceptionally exciting for me, because not only is this not just Launch Raleigh, but we've developed it recognizing that lots of Rotary clubs across the country might also be interested in this model. So there might be a Launch Baltimore, there might be a Launch Oakland, California, or a Launch Albany, New York, or a Launch Phoenix, Arizona. So what I was able to do through my very smart son, Brian Kane, and Midtown Rotary Club president, he put together a website called Launch My City. And you can find it yourself, launchmycity.org. And it's basically a template for those Rotary clubs out there in the Rotary universe, specifically in the United States, who say, you know, I really like the idea of building entrepreneurship in my city, but I don't really even know where to begin. It seems overwhelming. The Launch My City model is designed specifically as a template to walk you through step by step how you too can create a launch program in your city. One of the special things I think that Kiva brings to this equation is because Kiva is an international organization, and they came to us because they said largely our history has been working with international organizations, but we want to start loaning money a lot more to entrepreneurs inside the United States. And so they came to Rotary and they said, we think you're a beautiful partner, because what you all do is you bring us entrepreneurs who are already trained, already motivated, and they already understand the loan process. So when we make loans, we're betting that we're going to get well over 90% repayment rate, and we can lend not just $2,500, but if they pay back their first loan, they could also eventually get a second and a third loan as well. So Kiva brings, I think, a wonderful addition to the launch program that clubs across the country who say, I love this idea, but we don't have a ton of money that we can use for a loan fund. Kiva takes that completely out of the network and says, look, let's use Kiva money instead, or you can use your own money, whichever model you like. We're also working with a group called the Kaufman Foundation, who we use their curriculum, and they've expressed some interest to us, saying perhaps we'd like to be the curriculum of choice, because we have an online platform that we can share with other Rotary clubs when they want to put a curriculum for entrepreneur training. So that's kind of where Launch Raleigh began over the course of February of 2016 to where it is today. And I'm excited to just be part of this program, to recognize that all kind of things start off as a simple idea like Launch Raleigh did, and have really grown to be what I perceive as a very potentially strong national program. I've been in conversation with folks at for the Rotary Foundation, and the gentleman yesterday when I talked to him, he said, Matthew, as long as I've been here at Rotary, I think this Launch My City idea is the best idea I have ever heard. How's that for encouragement?
Thank you so much. That was awesome, Matthew. Really, really interesting and incredibly inspirational. And I just can't believe how much you've accomplished in a relatively short period of time. You've really done a lot. And we're so thankful you could be here with us tonight to tell us about it. I guess we have a few minutes for questions now, if anyone would like to weigh in. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
This is Rich.